Hi! Today we are going to talk about shifting and how to do it and some exercises that will help you get even better at shifting. So first we're going to talk about kind of the layout of I'll use violin of course, of the violin and the fingerboard. Second we'll talk about identifying like the type of shift that you're going to do because you will perform them slightly differently depending on the type of shift. Maybe you didn't know that there's different types of shifts. And then third will just be some exercises that you can do. And I will name some resources. I don't know how to link. So I will just name them and put a little like box at the end and write down what the resources are. And then you can put that bad boy into Google yourself and find the resources. So we're going to get started in a second. My roommate, I believe, is sleeping, so this is going to be an unfortunate awakening for him because the exercises are not super beautiful. Okay, so let's start with the layout. So as we know, as we go up the fingerboard, the spacing of our intervals becomes smaller because the string length is becoming shorter. Like as we press down the string, now the string is only from here to here, where when I'm in first position, the string is from here to here. So that's something to consider. And then next we have to consider also the hand frame. And if you don't know what that is, that's basically the setup of when all your fingers are down, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the frame that it creates, the spacing between 1 and 4, and then how 2 and 3 fit into that spacing. So from 1 to 4 on 2 separate strings is an octave, right? So that's our octave hand frame. And then we move 2 and 3 to whichever half step or whole step we need depending on the key. And then your thumb, your thumb fits in there too, into the hand frame. Like, is it closer to 1? Is it closer to 2? Like, what's it doing? So when you're shifting, the hand frame becomes very important, but the hand frame is also going to shrink as you go up the fingerboard, right? So hand frame important. Also the security of your first finger, the strength there is going to be very important too. A lot of the time we try to shift on either a 1 because it's our strong finger, or we try to shift on the same finger that we just left from. So if you can get your instrument out and take a look at it, and I want you to just find all of your positions, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can either do it like that or you can, put it up to your chin and identify them that way. And then also look at some of the identifying features of your instrument that are in those positions. So like my 5th position, I know my first finger is here, which is just a little bit shy of the shoulders of the violin. And of course, different instruments are made differently and shaped slightly different, so what works for me as an identifying feature may not work for everyone. So you want to kind of be able to just snap into position by feel and also by how it looks. So it's good to be like, okay, so 3rd position feels like this. I can feel like this part of my hand is touching this part of the shoulder of the violin. And also it looks like this. It looks like my pinky is, and whatever works for you. So that's the first thing. So then let's talk about what is a shift, why do we need to shift, and what should we be avoiding and what should we be embracing. So the shift is when you need to either move to a higher position because the pitches, you can't reach them in the position you're in, or let's say you have this melody and you want it to all be on one string so that the tone quality and the timbre matches, so you're not switching strings. So when you're shifting, you want to make sure that your shift goes with what you're playing. So if you're playing a very legato melody with and like singing, like you were gonna do all in one breath, right? You don't want your shift to interrupt that line. So let's say you're playing you don't want your shift to kind of interrupt that phrase. The composer doesn't care most of the time where the shifts would need to happen on your instrument when they're writing a melody, right? They're writing the melody, they're picking the key without really a lot of regard for how you will have to manipulate your instrument to make it sound that way. So Mozart and Beethoven are always very guilty of this. You're like, wow, what a pretty melody. I wish that I could play it. Because you're having to shift so much just to have the like timbre that the composer is asking for. In that demonstration, also what I was doing is I was shifting too fast for the melody, so it had these like surges of sound where they did not belong. So shifting speed is something that's going to come into play too. So the hand frame comes into play when you are shifting to a new position. A lot of the time I see students when they're shifting to grab the note that they need, but not preparing for what comes next at all. So let's say that we are going to shift from first position to third position. And the simplest shift is if we're going to go 1-1. So from a B to a D, right? So what I see sometimes, the first mistake, is a hop where the student releases the finger. Risky, because as soon as you leave the fingerboard, suddenly your measuring brain is gone. And it's just luck and I guess experience whether you can actually land on that D. So we always want to slide on the fingerboard. Now you say, Maggie, but I don't want like a big glissando when I'm playing. Okay, that's fine. So what needs to change is not the left hand, but in fact the right hand. So the bow is what's going to accommodate the shift now, and it's going to actually stop during the slide. Stop the bow. So my left hand kept moving, but my bow stopped. So let's watch that one more time. Now you want it faster. The left hand is always sliding. It never leaves the fingerboard. Now this is particularly important now when we are going to do what's a trickier shift, which is shifting from one finger to another finger. So now we're going to start on the same B, but we're going to shift up to our third finger in third position and grab the F sharp. So I'll demonstrate first. So this is where the hand frame is important, because what sometimes students do is they shift from B, let go, jump, try to find the F sharp with our third finger. I found it because I've been shifting a long time, and because I used to shift like this, and this is bad. And it's just luck. Like I got it this time, but I might not get it the next time. And certainly if I was under pressure in an audition or a performance, I would not know for sure if I was gonna be able to nail that F sharp. So what you want to do is we're going to shift up on our first finger, leave it down, find our D, and then place our F sharp on top of that D. So slow motion, it's like this. And I have my second finger down, I have my fourth finger ready to go for if I needed it next, and my hand frame is good. So one more time, from the B, up to third position, on the D, and then flop down my third finger. And that I am positive I will get every time. So now quickly, so that we don't hear the D, but my left hand did the exact same thing I demonstrated slow, and the bow again is what's actually stopping. And then I can choose, again, all I'm changing is the bow between those couple examples. I can choose how much like glissando I want up into the shift or how clean I want it, and that's of course depending on the period of music or the style of the melody. So I'll demonstrate the same thing shifting up to a fourth finger. So from B to G. All my fingers are down, I slide through the D. And then back I do the same way but reverse. I go 4, 4, 1. And that is how to shift. So that of course is important for intonation and security of the shift, but it's also very important for when you get up to third position, you're probably going to stay there for a second. And it's important to have all the other fingers lined up. So that's why it's really important to read ahead. So let's say I'm going from B to F sharp. Now I need to know whether, do I have a D natural coming up? Is it a D sharp? Do I have a G natural coming up? Is it a G sharp? And then adjust my hand frame accordingly. So let's say I'm going to go up from B to F sharp and then kind of just stay in that same hand frame with a D natural. Right, so I shifted from B to D and then had my F sharp down and then I kept my hand in the frame. But let's say I wanted to shift from B to F sharp and then I had a D sharp coming up. So I would actually shift through the D sharp instead of the D natural because I'm not going to play the D natural in that position at all. In fact, putting my first finger on the D natural would be dumb because I need it on the D sharp. Makes sense? Good. So it feels like this extra little step that you have to do, which is like shifting to a note that maybe you're not even going to play at all, but for security and for accuracy, which are the biggest thing in shifting, it's absolutely necessary. You have to do it. And so I will, let me give you a couple more exercises too. Well, the exercise that I would do would just be to pick a starting position and an ending position. So first to third is a great one for if you're not super comfortable shifting. And just go back and forth, and I would do it on a slur. And at first, don't worry if the intonation is not very good or if you're like overshooting, undershooting. Just practice finding like this really nice relaxed motion with your wrist. And then also keeping your bow and your contact point and your weight really stable the whole time so that the bow isn't kind of like going in and out with the shift. Our hands kind of like to mirror each other, so you have to make sure that you make them independent and that the bow stays really strong and stable while the left hand is active. Then once you feel comfortable with just shifting up and down and that your wrist looks good, then you're probably going to want a little more accuracy. So then that's a great shifting exercise because you get to hang out in your position for a second, kind of collect yourself, and then go back down. And you would do that on all strings, so D, and you're watching again those couple things that we talked about, like where's my elbow and is my wrist nice and straight, and am I like shifting in a relaxed way, and also where's my thumb right now. So you go nice and slow on each one of your strings, just 1 to 1, and then you can do the same thing, 2 to 2. And it's a good idea too to decide ahead of time if you're not just looking off of an exercise book, like am I going to shift to a major third or a minor third, just so that you're being really intentional about the pitches that you're shifting to if you're just doing this exercise in your head. Yeah, because obviously, right, the distance is a little bit different, whether it's a major third or minor third. So then once you get really comfortable with that, then the next step is to shift from one finger to another finger. So that's when you go and you do what we talked about at the beginning of the video, where you go from 1 to 3, but you pass through 1. And at the beginning, I would make it very obvious that I'm passing through one, so I would put like a full note value. Of the shifting note until I was really accurate with that, and I would do that on all my strings. And then I would start having the note value of the note that I'm shifting to, if that makes sense. So I would go something kind of like that. So I'm diminishing the note that I'm ultimately going to hide, and then favoring my start and my destination, and then I would get rid of that entirely. But you can see that my left hand is still going through that motion. I'm just stopping my bow. And that's kind of just a coordination thing that you'll have to figure out when you're practicing. So sometimes you have to put a giant stop in just to coordinate your hands. Like stop, shift, place my finger. Okay, yay! And then again, stop my bow, move my left hand, place my finger, then take it away. Right. And that's totally fine. That's how you have to practice shifting. So those are the exercises that I would use just to get started. And then of course you take that same exercise and you can apply it to any two positions. You could go from second to fourth. You go from first to fifth, third to fifth, and then just doing it on each string and always checking in with your form. Very important. And again, if you're doing it without a book, the good thing about that, or materials or whatever, is that you can either watch your arms in the mirror. You can watch your left hand just here, or you can close your eyes and just listen to your intonation. A book, of course, is handy because it's just kind of like takes away one thing to think about. But I think even when I have students use like a position book or whatever, it's super helpful if they can just memorize what the pattern is so that they can focus where they need to focus, which is either on their form, their intonation, or just some of these like visual or physical aids. So happy shifting. Shifting is not something to be afraid of because it is awesome and it allows us to play all of the notes that we have, and to then to pick out exactly like the position that we want to play a melody in the like best, most beautiful way possible. We're not limited, right? Just to what's easy for us or what we just have in our back pocket. So experiment with that this week. If you do like, I don't know, 15 minutes a day, every day, that would be a good way to start. And then you can start with more advanced exercises. And then start looking at your music and identifying these shifts and deciding like, oh, is this a like 1-to-1 shift or a 1-to-3 shift? And then thinking about that hand frame and what's coming next. I think it's kind of fun, but I've been in my house for like 10 weeks, so what is really fun? Okay, so I hope you guys are doing really well, and I hope you enjoy shifting, and I miss you, and I will see you next week.